Well, good morning, everyone. We have a lot on our agenda this morning, so why don't we go ahead and get started very promptly. It's great to see everyone. Welcome to this morning's meeting of the Tacoma-Pierce County Coalition to End Homelessness. And as we do most weeks, I will hand it off to Rosemary to get us started.
Good morning, everyone. Today, I welcome each of you to our open table where we connect with each other in imagining and building a community where everyone belongs, where everyone has access to safe and secure housing. We gather in this virtual space and acknowledge that these lands are the traditional home of the Puyallup tribe of Indians who've lived on and stewarded these spaces since the beginning of time and continue to do so today. We acknowledge the traumatic history of conquest, genocide, and stolen lands, and the continuing effects of a story in which the original peoples have often been treated as other, as if they didn't belong. Every day, the story of who belongs and who has a right to be in public spaces or in any shared spaces is told, reworded, retold, debated, and legislated. Policy and advocacy work responding to homelessness, which is what we often are doing, always builds its arguments on some vision of the right to belong. This coming week, on November 3rd, we will be reminded of a particularly heinous example of excluding a whole group as, quote, not belonging here. The 137th anniversary of the Chinese expulsion from Tacoma acknowledges the horrific mob action of November 3rd, 1885. But in the year 2022, we note the escalation of anti-Asian hate and violence, both nationally and in our own area. Aggressively asserting who belongs and who should go back somewhere repeats the shameful past story in a new guise. The called Tacoma method for white residents to exclude Chinese residents in 1885, which was mirrored in future actions in other cities, involved a massive sweep and violent removal of all Chinese residents from the city. The Chinese Must Go campaign was not an official act of the city government, but was openly instigated and organized by elected officials, including the mayor and members of the city council. We can't undo that past, but Tacoma has been gifted with the healing work of those who know a deeper truth about belonging. These people insist that reconciliation is possible if we're willing to engage others with respect and commitment to a different future. This Saturday, October 29th at 10 a.m., you're invited to join the Chinese Reconciliation Project Foundation for a walk of reconciliation against racism. This free community event will reverse the walking route of the expulsion of the Chinese community from Tacoma, reclaiming the city for peoples and cultures of all peoples and cultures, especially during this time of racist violence against Asians, African Americans, Native Americans, and other peoples of color. The walk will begin at Union Station, where Chinese neighbors were marched at gunpoint out of town along the railroad tracks, go through downtown Tacoma, where Chinese businesses and houses once stood, along Schuster Parkway and the railroad, largely built by Chinese labor, and finally arrive at the Chinese Reconciliation Park for final events. This remembrance through walking together speaks deeply to the truth of belonging. The moral call of reconciliation includes the acceptance of responsibility for the consequences of a past that is not really past, that casts division as somehow natural and views difference from, quote, us as threatening or wrong. Instead, we could embrace the story of we. And to center us on our work today, I end with the selection from a 3-part poem by Michelle Mush Lee from 2021. She says in The Story of We, the story of who we as people might be when we dare to belong is the story of a brick that dreams of becoming a waterfall. The story of who we might be when we dare to belong to each other is a name difficult to pronounce on the tongue. When we dare to belong, we become a hyphen that bridges all that is human in heaven, self, and other. When we see the humor and heartbreak in the eyes of one who lives across the myth of the dividing line, we poke a hole in that sky of stories that says we're better off divided. When we dare to belong to each other, we disrupt the mythical parable that promises safety in our separateness. When we dare to belong, we reveal deep traditions colliding with unlikely friendships, coming together across dividing lines, across dividing lines, across dividing lines. We cross dividing lines to create and heal, to empower us all. So welcome, everyone. And as we do every week when we meet, it's important that we understand how this group works. We are a group now of about 60 people, and so we need to have space for everyone to be respected and heard. We have a number of ways that we do that. We ask people to use the raise hand function when you're wanting to speak. And if you're not able to do that, to find some way to wave your hand madly about so someone will recognize that you would like to be heard. We also ask you to keep yourselves on mute when you're not speaking so we don't have distractions in the background, and to stop your video if you're doing other activities that might also be distracting. And finally, for the chat, we use this as a really important way to network during the meeting. We don't think of it as disrespectful. We carry on conversations there, and many people have met new workers, co-workers, collaborators through introducing each other to the chat. We also give a little bit of time during this beginning of the morning for those who are new to just let us know they're here, and if they're associated with a group that would be useful for us all to know the association, to tell us that. It's not a time for long introductions, but just for that, we would like to ask those of you who are able to do that to do so. And you can also introduce yourself in the chat with your contact information if you'd like others to contact you. So with that, I will open it up for if you raise your hand, Rob or I will notice you, and then we'd like to hear that you're here.
Lindsay, I see you have your hand up.
Unmute myself first. Hi, I've come to the coalition meetings before in the past when I worked at Inside Passages, but I just wanted to start coming again because I am still working in the housing community at Tacoma Pro Bono, doing housing navigation for them now. So, hi everyone.
Welcome, Lindsay, and your group is doing wonderful things.
Good, I know. Yeah, both groups are. Inside Passages too is a great team. So yeah, thanks guys.
Kevin.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kevin. I am a member of the City of Tacoma's Homeless Engagement Alternative Liaison Team, formerly known as the Homeless Outreach Team. And yeah, first time on this meeting in this capacity. Nice to meet you all.
Thanks, Kevin. Look forward to hearing from you in a little bit.
Diana.
Hi, this is my first time on this meeting. I am Diana Contreras. I represent We Care Daily Clinics. We are an opioid treatment program, and we just launched our mobile units. We are currently on, I think it's about between 84th and 85th and Aurora. So we're right down the couple blocks from Aurora Commons. And we are out there in the community now with our program on the mobile units. We are getting ready to launch in Tacoma in about a week or so. So if anybody needs some help getting folks connected, I will put my contact information in the chat box, and we'll do our very best to get them in and get them the help that they need.
Thank you very much for that work, and welcome to our group, Diana.
Thank you.
Susie.
Good morning. Hi, I'm an epidemiologist from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department, and I've begun to delve into some work related to people experiencing homelessness. So I'm here to listen and learn a lot, hopefully. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you, and thank you for your work in the health department. It's really important. Okay, Rob, I know we have a very full agenda, so if there are others who would like to let us know you're here, just put your information in the chat and indicate what kind of connections you're hoping to make, if that is part of your question.
Thank you, Rosemary, and welcome to all the newcomers. And again, I know we've said it a few times, but please do use the chat. It's definitely a tool that we use going forward. So feel free to share and have conversations there. So let's move to our first item of the meeting, and that is our regular This Week on the Streets section of the meeting. What we're trying to do with this section every week is to hear about what is changing on the streets, talk about the impacts of any of the current sweeps that are underway, weather, and then you'll notice the next item on the agenda is a new need and share section. So if you want to think ahead of things that you need for your outreach that you're doing, or things that you might be able to share with others for the work they're doing, that's coming up next. But let's get started with This Week on the Streets. And I see Zara as the first person with her hand up.
Hi, everyone. For anyone who doesn't know, I do outreach down at the current encampment down at 34th and Pacific. That's what I would like to talk about today. I'm extremely disappointed in the city's response. There's a few issues going on at the camp. No one knows if they have space at the shelter that is being built next to the camp. Every time I have gone down there for weeks, people have been asking me if they can find out. They know that there is a list. The list appears to have been compiled back in August. There are several members of the camp who have lived there for over 2 years who are not on this list. I have asked when I have been back weekly, and I have not understood that anyone from the city has gone out and done further outreach to let people know. They're being swept in 2 weeks. They also haven't been informed of that. They also haven't been informed of the new camping ban. So not only do people not know if they have space, a lot of people are under the impression that their tents will be allowed to be moved into the new camp. They're not being given time to adequately prepare in the pouring rain and cold to figure out a new place to go. I don't understand why this is happening. I don't understand why I, as a citizen who am not affiliated with an organization and not being paid to do this work, have to go down repeatedly to tell people that the place that they've been living for over 2 years is about to be swept. There's no reason that that should be happening. So I'm very interested in hearing from the HEAL team about what kind of outreach is being done there, because every time I speak to campers, people who I'm on a first name basis with, who I know have been at the camp for years, I don't understand why they're not being informed about this. I don't understand how there can be a shelter being built that's been in its planning stages for well over 6 months, and folks at the camp who are literally 50 feet away from the shelter don't know if they have a place there. So I'm very glad that Kevin from the HEAL team is on this meeting, because I understand that the HEAL team are the ones who hold this list. I would like to know how you guys are doing outreach to the camp, what you intend to do to let people know whether they're being moved in or not, and when you're intending. I assume you'll be posting your sweep notices with a 2-week notice. I frankly don't understand why it wouldn't be done sooner, particularly given that with the camping ban, it's going to be even harder for people to figure out where they're being swept to. On a personal note, it's heartbreaking. These people take care of each other. They have community with each other. They take care of each other's pets when they get sick. They share food with each other. They share outreach supplies that I distribute with each other. Their community's being destroyed. So I'm very upset. I really would like to hear from the city, and I'm very glad that they're on this call.
Thank you for raising that concern. And I don't know, Kevin, if you want to address this during your portion of the meeting here in a few moments. We do have 15 minutes set aside for you to talk about the HEAL team and the work. Would you like to address that then, or would you like to get into it now?
I'm happy to address a couple points Zara made now, and it won't take long. As far as the list goes at 35th and Pacific, I am a member of the HEAL team, but I am the bottom rung of that ladder. So that might be a question better directed at Javon Carlisle, my supervisor. I know Matthew Jorgensen's on this call as well, and then Caleb Carbone would know more about the list mechanism. I can say that I was at 35th and Pacific myself with 2 other members of the HEAL team the day that we found out that November 1st would be the day that it was posted. So we spoke to Angie, we spoke to Rosie, we spoke to about a dozen people who live at that encampment, and I don't disagree that there is community there. Just on a personal side note, it's not my favorite part of my job to let people know that we're going to be kicking them out, but we have been there. We have informed them as soon as we got the information that that was the posting day, November 1st. We go out and let them know that as soon as we were able to. So I'm not saying that people, that everyone got the message there, but everyone we talked to this previous Monday did get the message there. That's the brief response. I'm happy to share as much information as I have on that encampment or further ones soon or whenever.
May I respond?
Sure, go ahead.
So, Kevin, I appreciate that y'all are showing up and making a presence, but again, what you're saying is in direct conflict with what I'm hearing from people in the camp. I talk to at least 25 to 30 people every time I go out. And again, this is as a private citizen with no funding, with no connection to any services. And this is your job. This is the job of your team. You are the only people who are supposed to be making this transition happen. And frankly, the lack of structure from the city in making it happen, it's a disgrace. So I appreciate that you've been able to go out and talk to a couple people. If you're the lowest rung on the ladder, I don't understand why you're the one in this meeting at this critical time. I would like to be able to speak to your supervisors. I would like to be able to make connections between your supervisors and several long-term residents of the camp, like Cash, Johnny, Damon, people who have been at the forefront, who have been living there for years. Again, what you're saying to me is in direct conflict with what I have heard from campers on a daily basis, and this has been going on for months. So I'm not, when will the list be posted, and how can people from the camp access the list? They need to be
So Zara,
yeah.
I think this is diving into a level of detail that I know you're really passionate about. I think Kevin wants to respond to it as well, but I think it probably should be a conversation taken up with Caleb at the city. And I know I wanted to have an opportunity to hear from others about what's going on in other areas around the city, because unfortunately, the same fate awaits folks across the city with the camping ban going into effect on November 14th. So if you could have that conversation directly, maybe touch base with Kevin in chat so you guys can have a conversation, that would be great.
Sure.
All right. Teresa, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I just want to say that I am the one who invited Kevin to speak to us, and what I asked him to speak to us about, which might be a bit confusing because we've had Caleb from the city here often, and I do think that that is where this level of question probably belongs. I asked Kevin to come to talk with us about the work of the HEAL team, what they can do, what they can't do, what they are doing, and some of the challenges of the HEAL team. So I didn't ask him to come to explain the city's sweep policies, because we have somebody from the city who can speak to that. So if there's some confusion about what he was invited here to talk about, it's on me, because I really was clear that I wanted to hear from the HEAL team as a partner in this work, what they're doing, what their needs are, what they are facing, and it wasn't a policy invite. So I'm sorry, Zara, I have a lot of your same frustrations with the policies that the city has put forth, and I hope we'll bring those to the right place.
Thank you, Teresa. And Jay, you have your hand up.
Just really quickly, on the subject of the listing stuff, one of the primary concerns is that the people do not want to talk to the HEAL team when they're covered in gear and have cops with them. And so we're getting a communication divide. And that's what you're seeing. People don't want to talk to a HEAL team covered in protective layers, and the HEAL team is doing their best with the ramifications from the city. But we can discuss that later. And I'd love to actually talk to you about some of these problems one-on-one if possible. But that is primarily the concern. Like you said, 25 people, and then Frank said 12. That is incongruent on numbers alone. So just brew on that and talk to Caleb.
Thanks, Jay. And Jessica.
Sorry, I forgot to raise my hand. So I know I'm not in Tacoma. I'm not primarily in Tacoma. I'm in all the rest of the county. So my concern, along with everyone else's, is these sweeps, obviously. But my concern is more on the side of the sweeps are starting to push people over into my side or whatever, but they're also sweeping over here. So we're just kind of having, it's like when the ocean is spinning garbage in a circle. It doesn't, not that people are garbage, I didn't mean it like that, but that it's just continually creating a problem that we can't do anything about. Like I know that we've always just been moving people around, but it seems like it's just at a much larger rate right now. And so I'm just a little bit concerned about that. I just wanted to add in because I know that Tacoma's about to do the camping ban thing.
Thanks for that larger perspective, Jessica. So any other final on the streets items that folks want to mention before we go into our next section? Jeffrey.
Good morning, everyone. The campers are starting to move into Tacoma Avenue, some on the hill, behind fences. So far, the camps are 2 and 3 tents, not giving a big presence, trying to be, shall we say, under the radar. And I'm starting to see a lot, and I mean a lot, of solo campers out there. If I'm driving down the street, I can see, if I'm coming between here and 96, where my church is, where I am, I generally see 3 to 5 every day, and they're all different. So this, the sweeps have just really, really stirred the pot and have made it incredibly difficult for us to get a handle on how many people are out there, where are they? And Jessica, yes, they're heading south. So, thank you.
Thanks, Jeffrey. All right, so appreciate all of the passion and advocacy. And Zara, I hope you are able to connect with Kevin offline so that you guys can figure out a better approach to 34th and Pacific. So let's shift over to the new need and share section. And Jan, I wanted to let you introduce this idea.
I want to thank everybody who came today. 86 people are on this call because we represent the whole spectrum of homelessness. We can have a stronger voice. A major example is today we've got Mr. Oban and Mr. Barbie in the room who represent the county. When we had inclement weather, the last 2 inclement weather episodes, the county was very concerned about the vulnerable populations to the extent that the county can be. And we as a coalition have been invited 3 times now to join with the county to do a response to those who are living the most vulnerable in the streets. And what can we do as a coalition? Because this meeting has been on a regular basis, the faces in the agencies represented here came together and did a response. And I would like to think that we did reduce the morbidity and likely the mortality of those who are most vulnerable. So that being said, the way that this system works right now is sloppy and uncomfortable at best, but it's the only system we have. So I understand the passion coming from the witnesses to the camps. Verna and I and others from MRC have been on the streets with likely partners like Teresa. Teresa is a neighbor in the largest, what was the largest encampment in Tacoma for the longest time. We have seen and witnessed firsthand what happens to folks. That being said, when we went down this week to talk to 15th and G encampment folks, several of them told us that they did have placement with shelters because of the HEAL team. And I have been witness with many of you at the sweeps. I have seen the HEAL team in action. The HEAL team can only do so much. The big number we have to press on is the number entering homelessness. It is such a gross and fast and increasing number. We have to work on prevention. That's a different group of folks, other than those here, but our passions intersect. So I'm so glad to have Dr. Ahn here from the health department. She can do epidemiology, which gives us data as to what the actual impacts are of homelessness. We've got people from paid agencies here. We love our paid agencies, but typically you work 8 to 5, right? And those of us who are in the emergency world know that your biggest emergencies happen at 5:05 in the afternoon on Friday. So we've got a lot of volunteer folks here. It takes all of us to come together to do what we can, because nobody wants to pay enough taxes to pay for this problem that's happening to us right now. If we want government response, we have to be willing to pay more taxes. That's a different forum, but that is part of the upstream pressure. The city has put in millions of dollars to mitigate this. The county has put in millions of dollars to mitigate this. The problem is bigger than this. That being said, this particular platform can be used to quantify and qualify the need that is out there, because there is no other voice other than you here in the room. So what this little section right now is carved out for the next few weeks is the, what are we calling it? The need and share group. So use the chat. We have a volunteer, Christine Lindquist is a member of our group. Use the chat every week in this section to say either what you need, and you can be a volunteer or you could be a paid agency person. We don't care. Tell us what you need, and then also tell us what you have to share. I'm not saying we're going to answer every need, because we can't do that, but we might be able to know that, like, for instance, Teresa found out that TJ Maxx had a sale on large bags. And so we got a bunch of large bags to take to an encampment that was being swept. I mean, these goofy little things come together. And I would like to think that every time everybody has an encounter with somebody who is living homeless, you use that as a welfare check. If you think that that person is in serious need, we've got Greater Lakes is here, Jessica Hall is here, we've got Comprehensive Life, we've got all kinds of other kinds of folks who can either meet the need or not answer the phone. And this is the place where we have to document that. We have to document the need, and we have to document who is doing what, who is not doing what, and then we can address it together. So use this little 5 minutes here or anytime to put into the chat what you, as either an individual witness to what's going on, or as an agency or somebody that has something to offer. Let us know. We'll do our best to connect supply with demand. I'm a business major. And then we'll see what happens. The gaps are what we need to identify. Okay, did I just muddy the waters there? Sorry.
No, I think it's good. And folks are starting to use the chat to share those items. So thank you for that. We do need to move on to the next item on the agenda. And that is, we've carved out time for Kevin to talk to us about the HEAL team. So Kevin, without any further ado, the floor is yours.
Sure, thanks. I am planning on just giving the briefest of overviews, and then I'm happy to answer questions for a while, because I know that there are probably more questions that people can come up with that I can preview to answer. So again, my name's Kevin. I want to thank Teresa and Rosemary for inviting me, and all of you for having me. I'm a member of the HEAL team. since January of this year. I previously worked for one of the mitigation garbage abatement companies that the city contracts with as well. So I've been in and around homeless encampments in Tacoma, Seattle, Olympia, Puyallup for the last 4 years or so, but only since January in this outreach capacity. I'm from Tacoma, born and raised, and I love this place. So that's just the briefest of backgrounds about me. I'm happy to share my personal views and things like that one-on-one if people want to. I suspect there's a lot of overlap between most of us here on this call. And I did put for Zara or anyone else, I'd put my email and phone number in the chat a while ago, but I'm happy to do it as soon as I'm done speaking as well, because it might be buried at this point. But onto the HEAL team. Like I said, it stands for Homeless Engagement Alternative Liaison, which frankly I think is a bureaucratic acronym, or essentially an outreach team. And we also spearhead the garbage mitigation side of encampments as well. So on a typical day, my day looks like going to various encampments throughout the city, interfacing with the folks living there, as well as the folks who live around nearby or work nearby, if that's business owners or residential properties, and hearing out people's concerns, sharing information that I have, whether that has to do with an encampment removal coming up, which is that's the city's official term for a sweep. I'm happy to call it a sweep. Information about a sweep coming up, or a garbage trailer that's coming by if somebody wants to throw something away, or if people want water, or people want socks, or so on and so forth. It just looks like a lot of that visiting encampments. When sweeps do happen, we are the ones out there having those conversations with people, saying that the city has decided that this encampment is going to be removed. What would you like to keep with you? How can we help you? Can this garbage crew help you move your stuff to this area? Do you want to keep this? Do you not want to keep this? I say that because I'm on G Street right now, technically all-timer, Ernest S. Brazil and all-timer. And that's what we're doing for the next couple weeks here. So that's my briefest description of what we do. I know, like I said, there's probably a zillion other questions, and I've seen the chat lighting up, but haven't had a chance to read it yet. So if people have specific ground level questions about what do you do when this happens, what do you do when that happens, I'll probably have an answer pretty ready off the top of my head. If you have policy concerns, I'm happy to talk about those one-on-one. I don't think I'm probably the guy you don't want to talk to as far as forward-looking policy concerns on this, in a professional sense. I'm happy to talk about it personally, and like I said, I'll put my info in the chat after this, but I'm going to stop now and then kind of see what comes up.
Sure. Thanks, Kevin. And again, thank you for being here. I'll let you know when folks raise their hand or if we've got something to chat for you. And I see Jeffrey has his hand up.
How you doing, Kevin? I have a question. With the camping ban coming into effect on November 15th, I believe.
14th.
14th.
The
Okay.
14th, yeah.
Is the city going to create a map that shows where these people can go? We have a map of where they can't go, but are we going to have a map available? I'm an outreach person. Do we have a map for where they can go? Because I know we don't have enough shelter space for everybody. So having a map that we can hand out might be helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the question. We will be handing out the map that you spoke of where people can't go. I suspect that the city does not and by the city, I mean my department, Neighborhood and Community Services, probably would not want us handing out maps of where people, places that people can camp, or at least to give the idea to people that if they go to this area, then they're safe camping, you know, for the foreseeable future. So I suspect that that is not going to happen, that, hey, this is an okay place to camp. But we will be handing out going forward once that ban is in effect. I think various versions of the map that's currently available on the city's website. And I say various versions because depending on the sector of the city that we're interfacing with people in, we want to provide a more zoomed in, detailed sectional map of the city that people can say, okay, this is where the ban is in this particular neighborhood that I'm used to, and so on and so forth. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, that does give a kind of ground rule where you think what will be distributed. So Michelle has her hand up next.
Hi, Michelle, Salvation Army. I have a quick question. I hate to say this, I'm not too familiar with the camping ban. What is the consequence for unhoused communities if they violate the ban? Are they going to be incarcerated? Are they going to have their blankets thrown away? Like what is going to happen to them?
Legally, as far as the bill that was passed by City Council, I believe there's kind of an up to clause, up to a certain amount fine, I believe, and forgive me, but I forget the number, and I think up to 2 weeks in jail. I'm not a lawyer, I'm also not a police officer, and so I am not sure how often the maximum amounts of those up tos will be enforced. And I do know that the police officers that I work with are pretty reluctant to enforce that on the first go round, second go round, third go round. So I've never been a part of the enforcement of a ban like this because it hasn't existed until now. But my best guess is if we run into someone who's camping within a banned area, I do know we're legally required to give them 2 weeks notice before they need to move. And if we show up 2 weeks later and the individual or individuals have not removed their belongings or their habitations from the area, then we'll be informing them of, you know, potential consequences, including those up to X dollar amount and 2 week jail sentence. And then from there, I'm not sure, to tell you the truth. We deal with very fluid situations all the time, as far as all of you know. I'm not trying to say that that I deal with something that no one else in here does. I didn't mean that, but it's kind of situational dependent. So a non-answer, and forgive me for that, but that's as far as I can see right now.
Are you guys required to notify the police? Is that part of your job, to see where the encampments are to enforce the ban?
It's pretty rare that I'm not with police when I'm at my job. So there's 2 officers specifically detailed to our outreach team. Occasionally, if we're in an area where there's like known weapons, there's more, but there are 2 officers who volunteered to be on this, and they almost always know as soon as we do that there's an encampment in a given area.
Okay, sorry, just one more question, because I'm not from the state. Is Washington one of those places where if you don't pay a fine, it immediately becomes a misdemeanor that moves to a felony that can go to prison time? Like what I'm wondering is this going to be one of these laws that is a setup for unhoused folks?
You know, I'm from here and I don't know that. I'm sorry.
So there are folks answering that question, Michelle, in the chat. And I know we have Jennifer Ammons on who has the legal background to be able to answer that question. So I would suggest checking the chat for that. And then I know we want to spend as much time as we can with Kevin, but we also have a presentation on the agenda that we're running a bit late for. So I see 2 more hands up. Why don't we get to those 2 questions, and then we will need to move on to our next agenda item. Zoe, your hand's up next.
Hey everyone. For one, I want to clarify that the camping ban includes up to 90 days in jail and up to $1,000 fine.
Actually, that was amended, Zoe, before it was passed.
It was amended, so
Yeah,
it's
it was.
250
Yeah.
and 30 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
My question for you, Kevin, is you said something about with these new camping ban areas, people are going to be given 2 weeks. Does that does that include the 4 weeks between the passing of this and the implementation? Like, are people going to start? Is that possible jail sentence going to start on the 14th or after they've had a direct interface with the cops? What are the cops going to be doing when they're there? Does that include running people's names to check for warrants? That I'll start there. I know we've got stuff to move on to.
Sure thing. Yeah, no, I don't think the 2 weeks will start until the 14th when the ban comes into effect. So technically the earliest someone would be facing some kind of legal penalty or potential incarceration would be the 28th of November. So
do you know if there's plans to go and put sweep notices up in as many places as possible, or are they going to be doing this like staggered?
As far as I know, and again, I'm a lot of this is above my pay grade as far as implementation goes. But as far as I know, we just don't have the capacity to cover the blanket the whole city at once. So I don't know where the staggered start will begin. That hasn't been made apparent to me yet, but it's going to be staggered. I just don't, we have a team of 5 people, and we are bursting at the seams as far as covering the territory that we try to cover anyway. So I don't know whether we'll start with smaller encampments first and kind of refine a process that way, or if we'll tackle something larger like the encampment up the hill from the rescue mission. I really have no idea, but it will, I think, just by the laws of physics, have to be staggered.
Thank you for that question, Zoe. And Courtney.
Yes, thank you. Kevin, you mentioned what wasn't your favorite part of your job. Can you tell us what your favorite part of the job is?
Hey, thanks, Courtney. Also nice to see you again, or see your graphic. When people accept an offer for shelter and we get to take them there, and actually not the day that we take them there, but when we go back and we see them there, that's a pretty good feeling. So I saw a gentleman, I think it was yesterday, it might have been Wednesday, at the CCS stability site, who had gotten out of prison a few weeks ago and was living on G Street, and things aligned. He was able to get in there, and he physically looks healthier. It's very apparent. So that's my favorite part of my job, in addition to the relationships built, both with people I work with, people housed and people unhoused. But those are kind of the same thing. So relationships, and especially when people just physically look better after they want to go inside. Thank you for asking that. And I think, I'm not speaking for Rob, but it sounds like we need to move on. So I appreciate, again, you all having me. I'm going to drop my information into the chat, and I'm happy to come to future meetings as well when time allows. We're going to be working on the G Street and Alzheimer encampments for the next couple weeks. So people are welcome to come visit us as well. And if next Friday or a following Friday, if there is a pause as there is today, then I'm happy to come back to this meeting. So thanks again, and I'll be on the chat in a second.
Thank you, Kevin. And if folks have other questions for Kevin, please use the chat for that too. Appreciate you being here. So I am sorry for trying to hurry things along, but we do have a couple of guest presentations, and the first one is Steve Oban, and I don't know if John, if you're going to be involved in the presentation as well, but a presentation regarding the Pierce County Village project. So Steve, I can hand it over to you. I have slides that I can show for you when you're ready.
Yes, if you would go ahead and put it up. I think John's going to say a few words and then I'll jump in. And Rob, we've got till 10, right?
Actually, you can go longer if you want. Let me look at I have you at least till 10:05, but we can go till a little longer if you want. So
okay,
I'm sure folks are going to have questions.
Okay, all right. I'm going to abbreviate this presentation significantly, but John has a few comments first before I go.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Good morning, everyone. Nice to see a lot of familiar faces and names. And I want to say thank you to Rob and Rosemary for allowing this space for us to give this presentation and brief update. And Kevin, very powerful. It's not the what and what you're doing, it's the why. And I think you stated it very well about what makes what is so satisfying and rewarding. You're literally changing people's lives. So thank you for your work there. So as many of you know, we at the county level have adopted the comprehensive plan to end homelessness under the project management of Garrett Nyland. And one of the goals in that plan, number 6, talks about expanding the permanent housing shelter the permanent housing system to really meet the need. And under 6.4, under that goal, it really calls out a model that has been identified through Austin, the Community First Village model. And it's one of the things that we've really vetted under Senior Counsel Oban. His leadership and guidance has really vetted this process. And the goal of the county continues in our Human Services Department to be finding ways and solutions for long-term housing for folks. Again, responding to the immediate need and the emergency situation that our county faces, but then really looking at ways that we can long-term house people and then keep them housed, right? That's the ultimate goal, is housing stability. So today we're here to just go through a presentation, and I will introduce Mr. Oban. But before I do that, I also want to acknowledge that there's some other folks from our county on this team. So Garrett Nyland is on this call, Jeff Rogers is on this call, that if there are questions, kind of all of us will be available to answer some of the specific questions that may come up. So please feel free to use the chat as we go through this. And I know we have limited time. So without further ado, Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I will go through this swiftly so we have time for questions. That's the main thing here, I think, that of importance. You can go to the next slide for me, Rob. That'd be great. So I want to emphasize this is permanent supportive housing. So this is not temporary shelter. We need more permanent supportive housing. I think this group would agree. And we need housing for the chronically homeless that need options that are tailored to address their trauma, their behavioral health issues, the profound isolation that they've experienced in some cases for many years. And like all of us, really, they should have a human response. They should have a place where a community embraces them and believes that they have an opportunity for a purposeful life and to contribute to others. So that's the premise behind the Community First Village model that we're trying to bring here to Pierce County, and would be the foundation of our own Pierce County Village. The next slide is a video that is a powerful video that lays this out, but I don't think we'll take time today to do that. We'll be providing, I'm sure, a place where you can go to our county page where this video is featured. I'm going to skip over that in the interest of time. So just quick overview, this about Community First Village. This is a master plan community that's been around for really, in some ways, 25 years. They started as a effort to provide food and clothing to the homeless community of Greater Austin and the city of Austin. And as they learn more about the needs of the chronically homeless, this whole concept emerged of creating a community of attractive, nice places to live that are full of dignity, and then provide purposeful community around them where they can actually do farming, or through art, create items that actually can be sold. In fact, over a 3-year period, they were able to sell these items and receive about $1 million in revenue, all of which went back to the actual residents who were responsible for creating that revenue. So that's part of the premise here. Is you have on-site microenterprise opportunities. You also have on-site mental health and addiction recovery opportunities. You have case management there as well. And you bring folks who are like many on this call today, who care about the homeless and would be willing to commit to a year or 2 to live among these former homeless residents and help provide community, help have a spaghetti night, and they will live actually right within and among the homeless there, the formerly homeless, I should say. Next slide. This is just reminding us that the county back in 2021 for the current 2-year budget set aside substantial funds, and they wanted a proposal that addressed these 6 items, all of which have been addressed, and it's now before the council for consideration. That they wanted a minimum of 150 micro homes for formerly homeless. So you'll see that as I talk about kind of the phasing of this, how we're going to hopefully achieve that 150 and go beyond and actually build as many as 250 units for the formerly chronic homeless. Next page, or next slide. So we identified as a willing and now committed partner the Tacoma Rescue Mission, which is willing to take the substantial risk and responsibility of standing up this model here in Pierce County. So their board has approved that, and they've gone forward, and I'll talk a little bit more about the nature of that financial commitment in just a second. Next slide, please. So typically when we've done this presentation in the past, Duke Paulson, the head of the rescue mission, is with me and can talk about these slides. I'm going to go through these very quickly. And if you have questions about these operating issues that are more fitting for the mission to respond to than for the county, please put them in your chat and we will get answers to them from the rescue mission. So again, we're following the HUD definition of chronic homeless. We're going to prioritize those who've been out on the street longer. The first 50 units will prioritize those who come from the Spanaway area. We think that's important because we are citing this, as you'll see, in the Spanaway area. So we want to especially help that community. But this will be a village for all chronically homeless throughout the county, and not just Spanaway, but it will start by focusing on Spanaway. Let's go to the next slide. So the 3 elements of Austin that we hope to carry over here to our Pierce County village is, in terms of kind of community guidelines, expectations, is that residents be a good neighbor, have to comply with the law, and they need to pay rent. Now, the rent that is typically paid in Austin are those who receive like a SSI or disability check. It would be an amount that's affordable to them. And then, as I mentioned, there will be on-site microenterprises, so an opportunity for them to earn a dignified wage and supplement that income. No one's going to be asked to leave because a month or 2 they're short of rent. This is an opportunity really for them to feel a certain amount of buy-in to their community. So that's really the importance of the element. We'll need to rely on other resources for the substantial operating costs. Very important is engagement, dedicated case managers who provide that service on site. I mentioned dignified employment. We've already had real interest from several community providers in Vallejo and Goodwill who are very interested in providing necessary training and services, including as you see there, GSHS and Workforce Central. Next slide, please. It's just about the security elements of this. We need to provide a secure environment for those who live there, and it's going to be pretty important for the community where this is sited that they are assured that it will be a safe and secure environment. So those are those elements there that you see: 24/7 monitoring of grounds, and a controlled gate, for example. Okay, next slide, please, is the actual site. So the location we've identified, we needed a place that at least had 20 acres if you want to have enough people living there where this kind of works out from an economic standpoint, but also so you can site alongside the micro enterprises, the behavioral health services, the case management. So we found a site, and it has to be in the UGA, the growth area that has been designated for that purpose. So we had some limitations on where we could go, but this site emerged and it's under contract. It's 27 buildable acres. You see a lot of wetlands. We're not touching going near the wetlands, but there are basically 2 buildable spots, one 6 acres along the Spanaway Loop Road. You'll see that in a minute. And then the second is more interior, about the 21 acres where all the living's going to happen. That's where all the micro homes will be, and the services will be in that 21 acres. We hope to have on the 6 acres that abut Spanaway Loop Road of an organic farm, and then a farmer's market where residents can work the farm and help with that market, as well as other micro enterprises. The two will be connected by a 1,900-foot road with utilities alongside. Next slide just gives you kind of a summary here. So 257 formerly homeless homes, plus I mentioned, I think, the opportunity for those who are committed to help the formerly homeless live. Up to 28 additional units will also be built for volunteer residents. Each neighborhood, which I'll talk about in a second, will have its own shower and laundry facilities, and then 2 will share a large commercial kitchen and dining facilities. We want to try to create community and bring people together over meals. That's, I think, vital to create that necessary community. And then you see there depicted to the right, kind of a look at what the Village Commons is intended to be. So this will be a central point where a lot of the services will be provided. There'll be a small kind of mini market there, and then a large building that can accommodate as many as 150 people that can meet and gather for larger community events. Next slide, please. This is the neighborhood sort of concept. I'll pause for a moment. So if you really want to build the kind of community, frankly, that we all want, is you need to have discrete neighborhoods. So the idea is to build within this village 10 discrete neighborhoods of about 25 to 30 individuals. So you get to know actually the people around you that will share, common kitchen, common laundry and shower facilities. We think if partly what's been so hard and traumatic for the chronically homeless is that loss of connection to community, that loss of connection to family, then we believe it's in these neighborhoods where family-like relationships can be formed. Next slide, please, just gives you a very basic layout of what the living units will look like. This is the larger park model home. So this is about 400 square feet. There'll also be smaller ones at 200 square feet. All of them will have their own bathrooms. All of them will have a little kitchenette. All of them will have their little dining space and a living or a bedroom space. Next slide, please. So this gives you just a sense of the phasing of all this. We were building this in one phase divided into 3 parts to get us to the 150 units that the council wanted. So that first phase just takes time. You can't build all this at once. That first phase will be putting in an infrastructure in the first 50 homes or first 2 neighborhoods. Next slide, please. This just shows you the addition of another 2 neighborhoods or 50 units, and kind of the timing of that as best as we can project that at this time. Next slide, please. And this is the with the full first phase looks like with 157 micro homes plus the accessory buildings that will be necessary. And then the last slide showing the phasing. This phase 2, this is what it will look like if we can get up to the full 285 living units that this site has capacity for. That would be achieved by the summer of 2028 if everything goes as planned, which these things sometimes don't, but that's our best projection. And there's, again, kind of a summary of the 2 phases. Next slide, please. This just is an overview of some of the permitting, what we'll have to get. We found out we need to do a zoning code change, and so that is underway to come up with that code change that can take something in the neighborhood, I've been told by our planning department, of about six weeks. So that will begin probably next week. Next slide is just with some issues about wetlands. So we had our civil engineer directly address that issue. We've already talked with Department of Fish and Wildlife, with Ecology, also with the Army Corps of Engineers for that matter, because we have substantial wetlands in the area. It's 85 acres, but again, we're not touching 50 some of those acres of wetlands and buffers. This can be done without impacting those important wetlands. Next slide. Transportation, this is key, as many of you will know. Residents need to be able to get to appointments and be part of the larger community. So what's fortunate about this location is there is a Pierce Transit bus stop within about 2 minutes of the site. The park and ride, the Parkland Transit Park and Ride, about 9 minutes away. There's actually a CMAR FQHC health clinic just about 3 minutes away, as well as a multi-care primary care facility. So we've got services very close by, which is a real benefit here. And the mission has van service. They use at all the facilities, so they'll add a van service to take people to transit or to appointments. We hope that once we get a critical mass of residents, we might be able to induce Pierce Transit to actually bring some sort of bus service within the facility. You may have seen when we showed the site plans, there's a roundabout that can accommodate the Pierce Transit bus. The next slides are about kind of the capital development plan. I'll just summarize it to say that TRM hired a consultant to see if is there sufficient interest within the philanthropic community that has been a long donor base or part of their donor base for something like this. And conservatively, they've identified 18 million that they believe that they can raise over the next 4 years. We've also been able to identify and secure 1.5 million from the state towards capital funding. We believe there are other sources like the Housing Trust Fund that would also be responsive to a proposal for capital. So the capital to build the first 150 plus units is we're pretty confident about. We'll have to see about raising then the capital for the remaining units. Okay, I'm going to stop there. But why don't we just go? Yeah, I think the rest we can talk about if people have questions. I want to leave time, at least a few minutes for that, so I'll stop. Thank you for your interest.
Sure, and thank you for coming. So I do see some folks have questions. Jessica, you want to get us started with questions?
Yeah, of course I do. So I'm really excited about this, as I'm sure everyone is, because as somebody that works in the Spanaway area, this has been a very long time coming. My questions are, number one, who's going to be referring to this program? Is it going to be coordinated entry, or is it going to be kind of like how Aspen Court is, where like the HEAL team and myself can refer to that?
So if Duke were here, he'd say through coordinated entry.
Okay.
And that's been the experience of Austin. They use what their equivalent is there, and they're looking for, as I said earlier, those who've been on the street the longest.
Yeah,
that would be prioritized. Yeah.
Fantastic. My other question, which I asked last week, but I know you guys weren't able to come in. How are you guys planning on staffing the whole program or project, because, and the reason why I ask that way is because, you know, obviously we're all pretty short staffed. I myself just announced again, I'm looking for now 2 people. I need 2, not just 1. And so, you know, we're working with slim pickings here already. And so I'm just wondering if you guys have a plan on recruitment and things like that.
That would be a good question for Duke if you were here.
Okay.
If you could add that to the chat, then we
Okay.
can have him respond. It's obviously a good question, and it'll be up to TRM to go through that recruitment process. We have in the proposal, if you go on our site, you'll see a pretty detailed operations plan, and there are quite a few, you know, staff members that are going to be necessary, from case management, facilities, and so forth. So you raise a good issue. I'll let Duke answer that.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jessica. And I see Ryan Booker next with his hand up.
It's actually Patricia. I have a question in regards to sort of like weather condition sustainability. So a lot of like the micro encampments got very like wet. You're next to wetlands. It's different weather than they had in Austin. So how are you going to mitigate how like your foundation is like with gravel and water runoff and ice dams and things like that? I'm just curious because I've been in different situations where that was a real problem, that you got swamped even walking through. So thank you.
Can you, I think we've got folks writing down from the county these questions. That's one I think I better put to our civil engineer, and let me get an answer, if you don't mind.
Great. Zoe, your hand's up.
Yeah, a couple questions. One, someone responded in the chat saying sobriety will not be a requirement because it's low barrier, but you also said something about having to sign an agreement to not do anything illegal. And drug use is definitely that. So I'm wondering where the lines are going to be around enforcement and making sure people aren't singled out and removed. And then my other question is about rent and how that's going to be used, and if people are going to be required to start paying if they have income immediately. I know some people will be capable of that, but you talk about Social Security income, and that's $800 a month. And so people on Social Security have way more expenses than that. It really locks people into poverty. So I feel like trying to take any of that $800 from folks, it is not particularly just, especially when it comes to disability justice. Those are my questions.
Sure. It's a low barrier, so sobriety is not an admissions requirement. You can't expect that from folks who've been on the street for any length of time. So it is a low barrier in that sense. There will be engagement of residents, but they're not going to be drug tested. There's not going to be a requirement that you reach some level of sobriety, and if you don't, you're out. And I think the mission would tell you, as they have other housing, they have to comply with all the fair housing laws, and this is their people. This is their dwelling that they get to live in. It's, no one's going to, go inside and check for drug paraphernalia. That's not the intention of this community. So as far as the rent issue, I'm just sort of modeling here what I've learned from Austin, and that they've been able to require that, but I also know they're pretty gracious. So there are times where folks can't come up with it. Again, they have on-site micro enterprise opportunities to earn a wage, and they pay over minimum wage there. But I think there's no interest in, I think Duke Paulson would tell you, in asking people to leave because they can't pay their rent over some period of time. And when you move in, they work with you to figure out what you can afford and what you can't afford. So they have a plan before you move in, and that plan has to be realistic. So they want people, we want people to live there from off the street. The rent is not a disqualifying factor, but it is an expectation that is important for residents to feel like this is their community and they have skin in the game and they're invested in it. That's the main purpose of the rent.
Thanks for that question, Zoe. Zara, you're up next.
Hey, I just wanted to say I actually live about 10 minutes from this site, and I have quite a few connections in the community already to people who are doing organic farming who actually would be really happy to help out. It's something we've discussed, so I would love to be more involved in this program. I was also curious if you guys had heard about the Green Start program that's running through King County. It's administered by Dirt Corps. In regards to Patricia's question, they actually do stormwater infrastructure in GSI, specifically around reducing runoff and keeping areas from being swamped. But in addition, the Green Start program has been training people who are currently or formerly homeless to do wetland preservation, which seems like a really incredible job opportunity. One thing that we really struggle with in Spanaway is having any kind of economic opportunity. I lived here during COVID without a job and without a car, and it was a massive struggle. So I think there's really an incredible opportunity to not only shift the community's environment, attitude around homeless people as being destructive towards the environment or as being somehow ecologically a harm, right? While you are also then able to give people a job opportunity that not only is offering advancement in a very, very viable career field, but is eliminating a lot of logistical problems that prevent people from being able to go to their jobs. So I know that site, the bus service is not amazing, shall we say. So with the 60 acres of wetlands, I actually think, and because you have people in this model getting their basic needs met through food, through having food on site, right, through showers, you actually are creating a really beautiful situation to be able to implement something like that within Pierce County, where you can have people working jobs that offer therapeutic benefit to them from being outside, from feeling that they're contributing to something much larger than themselves. Again, really being able to reduce that stigma. So I actually work with Dirt Corps currently. I'm in a training program with them, but so I just wanted to introduce myself. I wanted to say I really care about this project. I am in extremely close proximity, and I've been forming connections within the community specifically to support efforts like this. So I would really love to be involved. I will be in touch, but I'll be talking to Dirt Corps this Saturday more about their program, how they've implemented it, what the funding structure looks like. But I really think this would be an incredible opportunity to get people that money and to start something like that in Pierce County.
I would love to talk to you, Sarah.
I'll put my my contact information in the chat.
Okay, thank you.
Great. And I see 3 more hands up. I would like to get to those questions before we move on to the next topic in the meeting. But again, please keep using the chat if there are extra questions we can't get to live. Teresa.
Hi, Steve and all. I don't know how many on this call read through the 150 pages, but I did. And so I have several questions, but I'm not going to get into all of them right now. I'm just going to talk about 3 things. 1, land trust. 2, because land trust is important for any public investment. It's just really critical that we hold on to that land and not let go of it. 2, the long-term housing. If you're going to put toilets in there, put showers in there, for goodness sake, make it something that actually makes sense for long-term housing. And I would recommend that you take a look at the Facing Homeless project, which has the block home project, and those are pretty damned affordable. Pretty darned affordable. And I just think it's a great process. We ought to move here to Pierce County. Then 3 is actually my real question. When I got to page 150, I read, dwelling units for formerly homeless residents will be rented to households whose income is at or below 65% AMI. Developer is expected to target residents with lower incomes. I just want to say that just shook me. This organization, this group of people has been advocating for 0 to 30% AMI housing forever. And the fact that this is not aimed at 30% AMI or lower is appalling to me. With the kind of money that's getting thrown into this, that's basically the least I would expect. And so my question to you is, this is something that Tacoma Housing Authority, there are other organizations that worked at higher levels of income. If you're talking about chronically homeless people, how in the heck do you expect them to have more than $44,000 in income each year? I don't have that.
Okay, great question. This is 30% AMI and below. Absolutely. There's the 65. The reason you've got that 65 number, I think that's on it's on the term sheet part of the exhibit, is when we were talking with our housing folks here at the county and trying to figure out what is going to be the requirement for this place to be operated at long term, 30 years. That's the number they always use is 65 AMI or lower. So that's why that's in there. If frankly, I'm very comfortable putting 30 AMI or lower, because
I would appreciate that. That's pretty disturbing to see it there. So that'd be a great change.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. That is absolutely the intent. So point well taken. We can put that in there.
All right. And Jeffrey.
I applaud the county's efforts. This is actually a good plan. It has worked in Austin, Texas for over 20 years and has been highly effective, and it is looked at as a highly effective way of taking care of the chronic homeless. My only concern is the 3 years or so to build it. And how are we going to help the homeless in that time period? We have to think about, and we can't ignore this, is how are the homeless going to be safe tonight? Yes, we have these great plans, and we're moving forward. I applaud that. I am happy that the city and the county have both chosen to do some great things. But we still have over 1,000 people living in tents, cars, RVs tonight. We got to remember to take care of them too. Thank you.
All right, and Courtney.
Yes, there's a few questions about who is going to build this. My specific question was, will organized labor build this?
I believe it prevailing wage laws are going to be operative here. So I think the answer to that is yes. I don't actually know the answer to that because I'm not the developer, and that'll be a question more for the mission and the developer.
All right, so I hate to cut the conversation off, but we do need to move on. Steve, is there any final word you'd like to say before we move on? I do encourage folks, as Maureen has said in the chat and as Garrett has said a few times, to visit the website and ask further questions there, because they are working to answer those questions. But I wanted to give you the opportunity to close it out.
Thanks. I think one thought occurred to me in closing, and that is what I think is pretty unique about this opportunity is it's an opportunity to leverage and obtain a lot of private funding. The experience in Austin, we all know they've got probably more money sloshing around there, but they've been able to do this with about 98% private funding. Now, we're not in a position to do that here in this county, but in our conversations with philanthropy and conversations with the construction industry, there's a lot of interest in providing donated materials and labor. This is catching real interest here. So this is unique in that it's an opportunity for the county to make an initial important investment, but it will leverage a lot of funding from the private sector, from private philanthropy. And those opportunities don't come along too often. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Steve, and everybody from the county for being here, and Garrett for fielding questions in the chat. Again, please visit the website and ask your good questions. And there will be opportunities we'll try to point out for advocating and sharing your thoughts about the project at upcoming county council meetings. So thank you again.
Thank you.
All right, so if we could really quickly get through the government updates, and if you don't have anything critical to share, that's fine. You can just let me know. But we have one more presentation that I want to get to. Tacoma City Council member Sarah Rumbaugh's with us. So I'd like to get to that quickly. But first, let's see, are there any other City of Tacoma updates?
Hi, everyone. Matthew Jorgensen from the City of Tacoma. Man, a few words, so I'll keep it quick. So 35th and Pacific is slated to open on November 14th, and we're looking at having kind of a community open house on the 9th and 10th. We haven't ironed out those times yet, but we should have a more concrete time next week that we can let you all know. And then also for inclement weather, cold weather's here. We've been talking to several service providers about kind of two approaches this year for inclement weather, having kind of expanded seasonal beds for the entire cold weather season, but then also having some additional beds for those nights when it's, when it's actually 35 degrees and raining. So we're kind of doing both approaches this year. Again, we'll have some more concrete agreements next week, like when those thresholds are and when we'll be able to start and open those beds up. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
We'll look forward to hearing those thresholds. So thank you. Any updates from Pierce County Human Services?
Yeah, I'll just share real quickly that we have a funding opportunity open. We're seeking applications to support the development of non-congregate emergency shelters. We have over $13 million available. I will put the link to our website where you can get more additional information on that, and applications are due by November 18th.
Thank you, Jeff. And Jenny, anything critical you should want to share from the Tacoma Pierce County Health Department?
Hey everyone, good morning. We just, we're going into fall, and you've probably heard about the media talking about the triple threat of viruses that are out there right now. So expecting an uptick in COVID, as is normal for us the last few years with the season, as well as flu, as well as RSV. Just want to stress, RSV is not a new virus. If you're hearing about that, it's been around for a long time. Most of us have probably been infected multiple times over our lifetime. I will share some links about what RSV is and preventing it. Just encouraging everyone, get boosted. I will share a link from the CDC that pretty nicely outlines. I know there's been a lot of confusion around those kinds of things. So I'll share the latest CDC description of like who is eligible and when, and how you can mix and match or not, and all of that. But get boosted this fall, get a flu shot. The aim is to have folks get flu shots by the end of this month, but you can get a flu shot in all the way from now until the spring. That's when the season is. So just encourage you to get protected, and encourage your guests, clients, friends, colleagues to get protected. Yeah, bottom line, lots of viruses out there. And yeah, that's it for me.
You always bring the cheery news, Jenny.
Here I am.
All right, let's see. Thank you, Valerie, for letting me know you didn't really have anything you needed to share today. And I don't think we have anybody from Pierce County Emergency Management on the call today. So with that being said, let's move on to our conversation with Councilmember Rumbaugh. So Sarah, I give the floor to you.
Thank you, Rob. And I want to thank everyone for letting me be here today. And I was talking with Garrett Nyland, I guess last week, and I'm always trying to come up with ideas after talking with like constituents who live in District 2, mostly thinking about my district and other parts of the city. And I was meeting with people who live in 2 of the Shag apartments and several other apartments in that area by Wright Park. And it became apparent that there's, like they're so scared of what's happening in their neighborhood with this encampment that's right there, which is 2 or 3 tents. And it's been cleared and it opens up again, and it just like a half a block away. And I told them that even though we have a camping ordinance that we've put together, that's not going to do anything about this issue. We need to find ways to work together to find a way to live. I didn't use the word harmony, but find a way to live together so that we don't have this conflict. And I was thinking, I was meeting with Shalom, Reverend Shalom from the United Methodist, and she was telling me about issues she'd had with some of the businesses in her neighborhood. And it just got me to thinking, is there some way that we could work better, and not the city, because I think the city is one of the issues. And I love our city, but I think that I'm not looking for the HEAL team to solve all our problems. I'm thinking differently about organizations that might be able to put an individual together here and there, and possibly someone from a senior organization that does nonprofit work there that could maybe talk with the residents and then talk with the people who live in the tents and see how we could maybe work together to create some kind of covenant or agreement about how they might live together there. It will mean people having to like give a little here and give a little there. After I had a meeting at the Shag apartments the other day, I walk out and one of the managers from one of the Shag apartments is yelling at this homeless man outside because he had asked for a cigarette. So she's obviously a smoker. I could tell she was a smoker. And she starts saying, you're harassing me. He said, all I did was ask for a cigarette and thought we could have a conversation. And I thought to myself, that's where we've gotten to, that we immediately attack someone for coming and approaching you. He seems so, I wish I'd had a cigarette on me, but I don't smoke. And he just seemed so forlorn, and he walked off. And I thought, wasn't that an opportunity for them to have a conversation, to talk about how, hey, what things could the people in the tents do that might make it better for the people and safer feeling for the people who are, some of these people are with walkers. They don't have very good physical ability to get out of their building. They feel they're physically challenged. They're older adults. I mean, these are our retired people, and they've lived there for years. Like I asked how long people had lived there. 9, 11, 14 years. This is their home. This is where they're going to end their lives. And I want to make sure their quality of life is good as well. And so I want to find a way that I want to have a conversation. I just felt like this was a good place to come and see what ideas you might have about doing something, what you think it might look like. I really want to find ways that we could, some of these smaller encampments wouldn't be an issue in a neighborhood if we could find a way to work with them. And I don't know if that's possible, but I also think like we have to try everything we can. And I'm that kind of person. I think that you try and try and try different things, and some things work and some things don't. And if it doesn't work, you try something else. But you are all out there. You deal with the homeless population every day. I deal with everybody every day. And so I hear a lot of things, and I just hate to feel like 200 or 300 people don't feel like they can use their neighborhood just because something's on the corner that's in some way impeding their ability. And I told them part of their job is to figure out how to take their neighborhood back. How do you live in your neighborhood, and how do you make it work for you? And so they're thinking that through, but I need some help seeing how we might bring something to this neighborhood and other neighborhoods if we could use this as an idea. So that's what I'm here for. That's why I came, because I think you're a group of people who maybe could help us out. And it's just an idea I had, and I mentioned it to Allison Griffith, but I did not ask the city for any help. I came here on my own. I'm not working with anyone else. It's just me. I haven't mentioned it to any of my other council members, but I am interested in finding out how we might work to create this kind of opportunity that I think would be positive for some of these neighborhoods. And so go for it. I'm not sure how you want to go from here, Rob.
Well, I do see a couple of folks have their hands up, and I do want to thank you for coming to us and starting this conversation. So let's go ahead and give an opportunity for folks who have their hands up to offer some thoughts and ideas, and then see what kind of conversation we can have in a kind of free form way here. So Zara, why don't you get started?
Hey, Sarah. So I just wanted to say I have lived experience with homelessness as well as CPTSD. And I think that one of the biggest issues in terms of what you're talking about is you have two things that are going on simultaneously. For the people who are living outside, their basic needs are not being met. And so it is going to be very, very challenging to find a solution that works for both, because there is not equity between those two groups. So for your folks outside, particularly now that there's the camping ban, you then have that intersecting with your second issue, which is that folks who are traumatized, and homeless people have overwhelmingly higher rates of physical, sexual, and emotional abuse, which is going to lead to trauma, right? Their living situation is already exacerbating that trauma. One of the things that trauma does is it makes you very, very hyper vigilant, and it also leaves you starved for that human connection. So really your folks outside are in a terrible position being in front of that residency, because we pick up on people's fear a lot more than they understand that we do, because trauma is essentially placing you back into that survival fight or flight mode. So to live somewhere where you know that you are not wanted, where you do not have the capacity to meet your needs, you don't have the capacity to get those mental health needs met, because a lot of times the services that are offered around that are re-traumatizing. So I think part of where you need to reconfigure is you're thinking about them as two groups who are on level ground. I don't think that that's the case. And so I really think, for example, what we were talking about earlier, where can people go, right? Like those, how will people eat? I feel like those are questions that need to be addressed before you can heal that dialogue, because you have one group of people who are trying to get their basic needs met. And I feel for residents. I worked in customer service in restaurants in Seattle for 10 years. I have had to kick many people out of restaurants. I have had people overdose in bathrooms. I've had to clean it up. Like, I fully get it. But that problem exists because those people's basic needs aren't being met, and because there's nowhere else for them to go. So I think that really has to be the focus of the solution in order to create that healing, because people can't find healing and cannot enter into those conversations with people who are obviously afraid of them and expressing this hatred towards them without some basic sense of safety. It's extremely re-traumatizing, and re-traumatization leads to isolation, which leads to addiction and death.
Thank you for framing it that way, Zara. And Zoe, your hand's up next, and then Sarah, let me know if you want to respond or break in. I thought maybe we get through these first 2 or 3 folks and then see if there can be a dialogue.
Sure.
So go ahead, Zoe.
Yeah, I want to start by echoing everything Zara said, that's such an important component. And I want to address, you said something about housed people taking their neighborhood back. And I really want to caution against language like that. Unhoused people are overwhelmingly the targets of violence by housed people and by business owners. There have been multiple murders in the last few years Every year there are arsons that happen to camps by housed people. And there's never any response by the city by anything. Sometimes the News Tribune will pick up a story like that when it gets really bad. One of the most basic things that could be offered is mitigating some of the bigger concerns that neighbors have. That requires putting in bathroom facilities, hand washing stations, consistent garbage collection. The city really likes to start programs and then just drop them and then complain about it going back. So like we have a garbage program and people do use it or were using it, and then it petered off and now everyone's mad about the garbage again. There needs to be sanitation measures that people are allowed to take for themselves. There's a really overwhelming idea that folks have that homeless people just want to trash things. And if you give them the resources to take care of their camp, they'll do it. No one wants to live like that. You give people garbage services and, needle disposal on site, people will take care of their space. And if there are people that are lacking, usually the other people there will help. There is so much danger from business owners to homeless people, whether that is calling the cops on them and getting them swept, or harassing people, accusing them of violence, inciting violence against a camp. We've been dealing with, there's been a group of business owners around 38th Street that have been meeting at Marlene's, and the stuff they have to say is absolutely vile. It's really unfair to think of these two groups on the same playing field, both for every reason that Zara said, and also because housed people and business owners have all of the power in this situation to bring about violence and discord and all of this stuff, and accuse people of being thieves. There are people that go into camps to say you stole this, your camp is full of drug addicts and thieves and all of this, and we're going to make your lives miserable. I don't want to take up too much more time, but please, please, please consider that homeless people are targets of violence in this city and everywhere. But I can personally name 5 different events from the last couple of years, that the group I work with has tended to. Yeah, I'll stop there.
Okay, so I just wanted to jump in, and thanks for those comments. I really appreciate, first off, when I said take back, what I meant is if you don't feel safe, walk with someone else. There's lots of things. I mean, that's something that I even do in my neighborhood, is walk with somebody else. This is a group of people who are over 80. The group of people I'm talking about that live in these apartments, these retired people who are elderly, have a hard time getting around. They are challenged, just so you know. And I think that's why I want to have a conversation, is because I think if they met the people and they had a conversation, they would see that they're really no different than they are. I think there's other things happening in the neighborhood that we should that the city should kind of look at. But in this situation, it's like they're half a block down, and I'm like, you have to find a way to work with people. These are individuals that have been offered services from HEAL, and they'd like a spot last time the HEAL talked to them, the HEAL team, they said that they would like a spot at Aspen Court, and there just isn't an opening right now. And so they're on the list. But, since that's the choice they want, and we only have so many solutions like that. We're going to have to wait till the next one gets built if there is another one. But I actually don't think that these people are at danger from the elderly people who live at the other end of the block. So the idea that elderly people are going to hurt them, I don't think is the case.
I mean, if they call the cops, that's violence.
Well, they call the cops because they're shooting, and they call the cops because somebody was peeping Tom in their window. That's the reason they call the cops. And actually, the cops don't respond. They make a 311 call is what they do. You know, I was there, I met with them, and I went through everything they've done and heard their stories. And I think that that's another thing too, is that we, on one side, also say a lot of things about people who are helped, that maybe we should go meet them and see what you think, because I want to have a conversation. I'm looking to have conversation. I understand that people who are on the streets and homeless are at a different level, and they have a lot of, and by the way, number one thing I agree is sexual violence. When we look at ACEs, one of the number one reasons people are homeless is when you look at over time is from a sexual assault, something that happened in their childhood. I completely believe that, and it's something I'm working really hard on in the city, is to get money for sexual assault, not just for domestic violence, but to really think about how can we change what's happened in our society, so that if there is child abuse, what are we doing to make sure that people get healing and that doesn't become one of the reasons that you become homeless. And I know that that's a reason that a lot of people may not take some of the shelter choices we have because of the things that have happened to them in the past. And so I am so concerned about that issue, and I'm glad that you brought that up, Zoe. It really is important. And I appreciate that there's a lot of negatives for wanting to do something, but if we don't try something different, how do we know we won't get somewhere? And it's not business owners that are in this conversation. There is a business next door, and I did hear from them. And if they have an issue with people who are trying to get to their medical facility because they're scared, they should figure that out themselves. But I'm really worried about the neighbors who live in the neighborhood living, and the people who live in the tents figuring out how they might have a conversation. That's why I came here today.
Got it. And I think obviously this is going to be the start of a conversation. Maybe it can plant the seed for something. And obviously this is a group of advocates, so we're always going to advocate.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. So let's go to Jessica. What are your thoughts?
Thank you. And I just want to say thanks for coming and bringing this to us. That's awesome that you even want to have the conversation. So I work at Greater Lakes. I'm a case manager and an outreach worker. I work primarily in unincorporated Pierce County, so I'm not really in Tacoma a whole lot, but I will say that with other groups like the Pierce County Sheriffs, I've worked with the University Place, PD, things like that. They're starting to have these conversations with community members. And so I'm creating a presentation right now for a group of landlords that are kind of curious as to what's going on. And obviously there's going to be a lot of negative in that because landlords versus rent prices, everybody's going to have somebody to fight with on that. But I think that there is a lot to say about bringing two groups together that they're both vulnerable, both of them, both homeless people and elderly people.
Anybody else hearing Jessica? Oh.
I don't hear Jessica.
Yeah, and my internet connection was unstable there for a minute. So
Same here. I want to hear Jessica. If Jessica wants to finish having a conversation with me, I'm going to put my information in the chat. If you want to reach out to me, I would love to meet with you and work on this. I have some ideas, and I want to hear from all of you. So I'm going to give you my information so that you can move on. Feel free to reach out to me. I'm very interested in continuing a conversation.
Okay, great. And it looked like we had something weird happen with Zoom here because I saw my entire Zoom screen reshuffle. And I got a notice that I had a bad connection. So are folks hearing now? Are we back on? Okay, great. And I do see Jessica's still frozen. So let's go to Courtney.
Okay, am I still frozen?
Yeah, well, I can hear you now. Yeah, Sarah said that she'd like to hear your ideas. Yeah, a lot of people are we ran into something weird with Zoom. I think it affected everyone in the room. So,
Okay.
So maybe the two of you can connect.
Oh, okay. I just wanted to say that I think it's important for us to, it's taken a lot for me to get to the point where I can see both sides of everything. And I think it's really important to kind of start there in the middle, because if we just start with, you know, housed people are up here and everybody else is down here, and then we're kind of putting everybody against each other. And I really don't want to do that either, is all I was going to say.
Yeah, I really appreciate that. And so now that we're back to normal Zoom weirdness, let's go over to Courtney.
Yes, thank you.
And you just cut out as well, Courtney. Kathy, you want to see if you're able to talk?
Am I able? Can you hear me now? I don't know. Okay, good. Yeah, thanks, Jeffrey. I appreciate that. Okay. Had a preconceived idea on what Sarah Rumbaugh was going to say today. Thank you for not doing what I thought that you were here to do. So thank you for that and being willing to start the conversation. My son and I were actually going to his back to school event, and we stopped and had a conversation with some RV campers next to his school. And so I appreciate what you said about having a conversation with people that you might not normally. I mean, it was very productive. It was very eye-opening. And he goes to Hunt Middle School. And last year we had car campers on that street. And that's where I was really conflicted as an advocate and as a mom, because, you know, I don't want to cause problems for people and make them feel unwelcome in our neighborhood. But yet again, when their trash was all over there was debris. It looks like a debris field. I have no other explanation for it. But having conversations with people from different walks of life is very important. And I think language is huge. We need to, I have yet to read an article or see something in the media that doesn't put homelessness and crime in the same sentence. And I think that's a very dangerous narrative. And I think that we have to be very, very careful, as we've talked about today, because a lot of the unhoused are preyed upon rather than being the predators themselves. And we have to be very careful about the language that we use. And I myself am, you know, with Tacoma Tenants Union, of course, there's an us versus them. There's tenants versus landlords, right? But if we could find some common ground, maybe things would get better.
But it's tenants versus some landlords, because not all landlords are the same.
And
right?
it's not all tenants either.
Right.
Tenants
and
trash
that's what I'm
their
trying
unit.
to get to is that conversation that everyone who's in an encampment is not a criminal, and we know that. And we know that criminals prey on people in encampments. And I think we need to, that is very true, that language that we use really sets a tone. And so when I go to these public meetings and I listen to people, I try to change what they're saying. And when I was talking to these elderly people, it was about find ways to do the things that you want to do. Do not, that's like if you want to go walk with someone else. I mean, that's a normal thing to do. And I had the Metro Parks come and talk about the park and what are the things that we could do to make the park more friendly for senior citizens. I'm trying to find other ways. Do we need
I'll
to
go
do
walk
trash?
with them.
Right.
I need
Do
the
we need to do
exercise.
trash?
I'll go down there.
Right. Do we need to do trash pickup on G Street and 3rd and just be that kind of neighbor and like help out? And I think like a bathroom makes a lot of sense. Every time I see these, I think we create some of this ourselves by not providing services. And then it's like, yeah, they do get destroyed. And that's an unfortunate thing, but I don't think it's the homeless person who destroys it. It's someone else who comes by, but they get blamed for a lot of things. So I agree with you. Thank you.
You bet.
All right, so I know we're running into all kinds of technical issues with Zoom right now. I know my screen froze up, although I could still hear Kathy, and hopefully everything's working on outside of my own screen here. But let's go to one more comment, and then maybe Sarah, hopefully there's some fodder here, like I said, a seed being planted for this conversation.
I would love that. If people wanted to,
Yeah,
if we want to find a way to meet again, I would love to do that. We don't have to meet here. I'm going to be gone for a couple of weeks, but I would love to set something up with some of you who are interested, nonprofits. I'm also looking, I think we need to have a senior citizen nonprofit that might be involved. They might be a good person to work with, know how to talk to senior citizens and help them find a way that they want to coordinate. I think it's really important that we allow an equity thing here, that everybody, that we're all citizens of Tacoma. I mean, if you're here, we consider you a citizen here. We don't treat you any differently if you're in Tacoma than if you might have been in Puyallup, but you are here in Tacoma, we consider you. That's why we give services. But I want to make sure that we all are here together, not that we're thinking one has more power than the other. I hope that came across.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah. And Jeffrey, I do see your hand. I see Courtney's hand as well. I also am looking at the clock, and we're rapidly running out of time. So let's see if we can rejoin this conversation. And Sarah, if you can reach out to me and let me know if it'd be helpful to come back here when you're back. We'd be happy to have you. So let me point out the obvious. We don't have time to do a breakout conversation today. So we will rejoin the breakout and the review of the last meeting next week when we don't have quite as crazy of a schedule. But I did want to honor a request. Pierce County Council Member Ryan Mello is on the call and wanted to offer some tips for an opportunity to learn and advocate at an upcoming Pierce County Council meeting. So I'd like to carve out a few moments for that before we wrap up today's call. Council Member Mello.
Thank you, Rob, and good morning, everyone. Again, always great to be in this space to learn with you and be with you. So thank you for everything, as always. I just wanted to give an update that on this next Tuesday, November 1st, many of you there's a good opportunity to advocate together this next Tuesday, November 1st, at our Human Services Committee meeting of the County Council at 9:30 a.m. We'll be bringing up the adoption of our housing action strategy. This is different, but related, different than the comprehensive plan to end homelessness, but of course related. We're all working on long-term permanent affordable housing strategies in tandem with our intervention and mitigation strategies in the comprehensive plan to end homelessness. So I know you all get that better than most. So on Tuesday, again in committee, is the first look, and we're going to be taking action to adopt our housing action strategy, to ensure that this is not just some performative measure where some folks can take a political victory lap. We're serious. The council is serious about its adoption and implementation. And we'll be running an amendment in committee that advances several early actions, is what we're calling them, One of the early actions is to set in motion the adoption of the 1/10 of 1% for housing and homelessness. This is going to generate $20 million a year for affordable housing and homelessness supports. Let me be clear, right? That's a lot of money. We can bond it. We can use it for services. We can use it for capital. We can use it to plug the budget holes that are apparent to me in the Community First Village operating budget. That operating budget is a good start, but it needs a lot of work. There's some pretty significant barriers to that Community First Village project being successful. One of which is the operating budget. By my vantage point, we all want that to be successful. Wherever we choose to cite it, where it's appropriately cited. But that's not. I'm not saying that's where we're going to spend the preponderance of the money. I'm just saying you all spend a lot of time on the Community First Village project this morning. Thank you for that. It could fund that, but there's lots and lots of need to implement our comprehensive plan to end homelessness and permanent affordable housing, and that's where this 1/10 could go to. Of course, again, it'll generate $20 million a year in new revenue, and that's really, really exciting. I want to be clear. The action on Tuesday in committee is to set the legislative process in motion. It's not adoption of the tax in committee. It's adoption of the housing action strategy with early actions. I've sent this to a few people, including Rob and Maureen and Sally and others. If you want to reach out to them, they have a copy of the amendment that we're running Tuesday morning. If you're especially interested in being an advocate with us, so it sets in motion the legislative process. We needed this revenue a few years ago, right? But the objective is to get this done as quickly as we can get a fifth vote. I'll remind you, it takes 5 votes per the Pierce County Charter to adopt a new tax. So we are actively working on that. We're having really productive conversation with our colleagues at the County Council on that. There are other early actions in the amendment we're running that help implement this housing action strategy. I think some really great early actions. The one that many of you have been advocating for so long, I wanted to bring to your attention, is the 1/10 of 1%. So Tuesday in committee at 9:30, and then we're going to set this for final at the county on election day, November 8th, for final action to adopt the housing action strategy and set in motion these early actions. And then we're going to try to pass this before the end of the year and work swiftly, right? We're taking this very urgently, very seriously to implement this this housing action strategy and these early actions. So I know the time is late, Rob. Thank you for giving me a little time, and we would love anyone's help in moving this forward with us. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for being here and raising it. I know it is an issue that a number of folks in this room have been advocating for the county moving forward with the 1/10 of 1%. Even though sales tax is not the best mechanism to collect funding, but it's what we have available. So thank you for raising it. So unfortunately, I need to leave to another meeting. So I have made Teresa the host, and I just wanted to say thank you for the rich conversation today. And I look forward to seeing everybody again next week and hearing what y'all plan for those of you who stay in the planning meeting. So time for me to step away, and Teresa, I give it to you.
So I get to be the tyrant of the last 2 minutes of the meeting. So I think that the best thing, a lot of the agenda went to the wind for a good reason. So maybe if people have that last thing on our agenda is any good news to share, any heartening stories that we can walk out of the Zoom room with. So does anyone have something they brought, something good that happened that you can share with us? Don't make me call on you by name. I know you have good stories. Jessica.
I promise I don't raise my hand this much in real life, but so I have a client that I've been working with for like 3 years. They are a double amputee with knee down due to drug addiction for years and years, and have been living on the streets for a very long time. They are finally in a hospital facility getting healed up. They've been there for, I want to say like 10 months, and they're finally getting housed. I went and saw them this week, and first of all, I want to say that seeing this person go from maybe 50 pounds, granted, remember they're a double amputee, to over 100, 150 pounds. I mean, he's doing good, but I got to see them and just have a conversation and see the light come back into somebody's eyes, that it was absolutely gone. And also, to kind of go back to what we were talking about, you know, with these people and you know, it's always those people versus those people. But when we're talking about these people, they're human beings. And I was able to bring a new person with me to kind of meet with this individual and explain, you know, any point in time that somebody walked by them, I'm sure they had nothing but bad things to say about them when they were on the street. But would you, after having a conversation with that person, do you see like that they're an amazing human being, period? So that's my happy story of the week.
Thank you for that happy story. I want to say it's past 11 now, so we're going to lose a bunch of people, but I'm going to stay on to hear these last 2 hands that are up, and I want to invite anyone who wants to stay to talk about planning next week to please hang on, and when we're through with this, we'll take a 5-minute break. Go ahead, Ryan.
It's actually Patricia, but I'm going to hold it for another time. But there are success stories, and I mean, what people go through to create that success is amazing. So just celebrate the people that you work with, and I'll give the personal story to that at another time.
Cue that up. Cue that up for next week.
I will.
Thank you.
All right.
Rosemary?
This is not really a story of something that has happened, but it's just a reminder of some really positive thing that we can do on Saturday. I put the information about the walk to the Chinese reconciliation pagoda in the chat. So if you're still here and want to save that, the information is there, or you can look it up online for the event on October 29th at 10 a.m.
Well, thank you to all the bitter enders in this call, and those who are even more into bitter ends can join me here back at the same place at 11:07. We'll take a 5-minute break.